I can't believe how quickly the news cycle moves in today's day and age. It's insane. It's psychotic. It was 3 days ago, the story breaks. Everyone's going crazy, screaming about some kids, yelling at a guy or getting in some guy's face. And then that same day, I see evidence contradicting it, but the mainstream news jumps on the story the next day without fact-checking. Even high-profile personalities like Philip DeFranco pulls up his phone and says, I can't believe what I'm seeing here, without fact-checking any of it. Then what happens? A bunch of mainstream people start pulling down their tweets, apologizing, deleting, retracting, after they had called for death and violence. And then a new narrative emerges. The kids actually aren't victims, and now you've got the far left doubling down, saying they're wearing blackface and all. Just absolute psychosis. But many high-profile personalities have apologized and retracted. Kara Swisher is one of the most notable. She tweeted that I think she said, I unequivocally apologized to these kids. I shouldn't have done that. It was stupid, yada yada. And I said, very honorable and respectable. And I really do mean that. And I was surprised to see that in response to me saying that, people were like, no, how dare she? She should have done it in the first place. And I'm like, no, listen. Pencils have erasers, okay? You must learn to forgive, especially when someone asks for it and unequivocally apologizes. Do I think what Kara Swisher tweeted was wrong? I do. I think she jumped the gun, and I think her overt attempt at joining the mob because they want to feel like they fit in caused problems for everybody, especially with how she's a high-profile writer, like tech writer or something. The point is, when they come out and apologize, give them some positive reinforcement. That was the right thing to do, and I respect it. And you should do that for everybody. I learned this most notably when I publicly insulted Joey Salads during Sweden and immediately realized how that was so stupid of me to do, and that if I really want to try and solve these problems with, like, fake news, I should just extend that olive branch and say, you know what, you do deserve forgiveness, because if I don't give you forgiveness, your only alternative is to double down. So let the people apologize. However, what about the people who aren't apologizing? What about the people who aren't taking down their tweets? Well, for that we have lawsuits. This story from the Daily Wire: lawyer for Covington kids threatens to sue New York Times for obvious libel. People line up to help. Yes. So, let's read. The blowback from the egregiously irresponsible reporting of most mainstream media outlets about the contextless viral video of the boys from Kentucky's Covington Catholic High School harassing and threatening a Native American protester could include some legal headaches for some of the reporters and outlets. In a tweet that's made headlines, Robert Barnes, a trial lawyer based in LA, issued an unequivocal warning to the New York Times' Maggie Haberman about a report on the Covington kids. I will represent the kids for free if they want to sue Maggie NYT for obvious libel. Now, you may remember Robert Barnes. He represented Cassandra Fairbanks in her suit, as well as many others. So, you know what? I want to point out one thing, too, before we read on, about the potential for a libel suit. In order for there to be a libel suit, there needs to be a statement of fact. Now, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but I've dealt with this quite a bit. If you say someone is harassing or threatening, it's possible they could say, well, that's an opinion. The kids in the video appeared to be jeering at the Native American, and that was their opinion, what they were doing. However, there is another thing that needs to be pointed out. Many of these news organizations uncritically went with the activist propaganda that these MAGA people got in the face of Nathan Phillips. They also ran lies from Phillips that were easily debunked. So, CNN actually, and CNN made some other false statements too. This could bite him in the ass. CNN in a transcript called Nathan Phillips a Vietnam veteran. He's not. We know that now, okay? We know he's not a Vietnam veteran because he himself said Vietnam Times veteran, and now according to many sources, I don't know if this is true, but my dad said he believes it, according to a DD-214, Nathan Phillips apparently was a repairman for refrigerators, a reservist, and never actually left the U.S. So the point is, CNN and many other outlets calling him a Vietnam vet published fake news. So when they say that these kids were threatening and harassing a Vietnam veteran, that is a false statement of fact, okay? So a lot of people have questioned whether or not you can sue someone for libel and slander when they call you far-right. You can't. Far-right's an opinion. No one even knows what it means. Not even the people writing it know what it means. But if they say John Smith did a backflip, and in fact, there's a video showing it was a front flip, that's a statement of fact. So-and-so did X, he didn't. Even if the kids were heckling Nathan Phillips, they were. If they said they heckled a Vietnam veteran, that's still a false statement of fact because Phillips is not a Vietnam veteran. You see what I'm saying? But let's read on. Barnes' tweeted threats to Haberman instantly inspired support online, including many who offered their services and financial support to help with the libel lawsuit. I'll happily work the case for free as well. Evil needs to be stopped, wrote one supporter. Whatever I can do in PR, I'm all in, at another. I think it's time to get a group together that does pro bono PR work when media slander someone innocent. We must stop this madness. Someone set up a GoFundMe page, and I'll be the first to check in, wrote another. This is, without hyperbole, evil. Time for us patriots to take back the narrative from the MSM, damn liars, and present truth. Thank you to the lawyers offering such services. And then we have a big slew of all these, it's basically just reading what they were saying. PJ Media's Deborah Hine reports that Barnes went on to explain that anyone who doesn't correct or retract the false claims could expect a libel lawsuit. And just writing that a more complex picture has emerged might not protect them. Barnes has since called out multiple media outlets and personalities issuing similar libel threats and underscoring that attempts to simply soften or back away from their original reporting isn't enough. A few examples include Barnes' tweets directed at an Esquire editor, Elizabeth Warren and Kathy Griffin. This one's interesting. Advice to journalists: don't compound or double down on your first set of libelous lies with more libels and lies. This tweet from Tom Watson, it's gone. He deleted it. So it looks like, okay, so apparently, in a libel suit, the first thing you need for punitive damages is to tell people to retract. If they don't retract or they try to like soften, like he's saying, it's worse, right? And so you could potentially get more money from the individual. The most important thing is that it has to be a statement of fact, right? So calling someone a Nazi isn't a statement of fact. It's your opinion. And it is. And a lot of people keep telling me they disagree, but dude, I've talked to like 8 lawyers about this, and I've actually been involved in some of these libel cases, and won, by the way, because calling me alt-right is really extreme. It's like, how many times do I have to tweet that Bernie Sanders is like my favorite, my prime choice? And it's not even like I'm just saying that. You can ask the people I used to work for Fusion, which is now the Splinter Group, which is far left. You can ask staff there, like, I was foaming at the mouth for Bernie Sanders. I'm lost a lot of my favor towards him because he has started embracing some identity politics narratives, and he's backed down too much, and it breaks my heart. But look, I hate all the politicians, and Bernie is still my favorite. And no, I'm not a socialist. Bernie is a little too far left for me too. But you got to admit, there's a lot of people who are Trump supporters who recognize Bernie was better than Hillary, and Bernie and Trump had a lot of things in common, like no free trade agreements, bringing back factory jobs, and Bernie also made comments about how gun rights is a urban versus rural issue. I'm not going to go preach about why I think Bernie is the best, okay? And I'm not saying being the best makes him a 10 out of 10. It's just like a 6 out of 10 for me, right? The point is, we're reading this, and I'm not going to go on a rant about Bernie, but I can still go on a fervent rant as to why I like the man more than any other politician. But let's read on. Esquire editor really wants to be sued for libel as he engages in mind reading. What is instantly recognizable is the malice in the media for Trump supporters. Easily triggers their libelous instincts. David Holmes tweeted, to anyone who has ever been any kind of other, the goofy malice in the MAGA kid's eyes is instantly recognizable. That's an opinion. I don't think you can sue for that. But Robert is a lawyer, so, you know, maybe he's just trying to get him to pull the tweet down. Maybe it wouldn't fly. Fake Indian promotes fake news, he says. Omaha elder and Vietnam War veteran Nathan Phillips endured hateful taunts with dignity and strength, then urged us all to do better. This actually could be grounds for a suit, because she said Vietnam War veteran Nathan Phillips endured hateful taunts. Even if he did endure hateful taunts, which you could argue, you seriously could, he's not a Vietnam War veteran. Thus, she has made a false statement of fact, implying that these kids were taunting a Vietnam War veteran. He's not. He is not. That is a false statement of fact. These kids never taunted a Vietnam War veteran. Even if you want to argue they taunted Phillips, he's not. So that's big. He said, hey, Kathy Griffin, if someone wants to serve you a libel and invasion of privacy suit for these kids, do they send it to Lisa Bloom, or is she still busy helping Harvey? This is when Kathy Griffin called for names. This is probably not necessarily libel, depending on, this tweet itself might not be, but she definitely did incite, and she may have grounds for like reckless endangerment or something, which I don't know like the law, but the point is Kathy Griffin is calling for action against these people, so it could be like mob harassment of something. It could be harassment, right? You got to take into account her following. We then have USA Today. The crowd of students, some of whom wore MAGA caps, mocked Native Americans while chanting "Build the Wall" and using derogatory language. False statement of fact from USA Today. This is big. They never chanted "Build the Wall." USA Today published false statement of fact. This is big. And the tweet, it looks like, still exists. Wow. This is huge. Okay. Seriously. They never chanted Build the Wall. The fact that they published this on the 20th, this is seriously big. USA Today is going to be paying out. I sincerely believe USA Today will hand a check outright. They're just going to settle like that. This is definitively fake news, false statements, and absolutely, wow. Barnes, he's going to walk right out of that one with a suitcase full of cash. WAPO reporter lies and libels a bunch of kids while regurgitating the manifestly bogus narrative of the lefty protester already caught lying about the very event. While white teenagers in MAGA hats relentlessly mocked him, Nathan Phillips thought about his wife, Shoshana, who died of cancer 4 years ago. Well, I don't know if you can sue for this one probably. So one thing to remember too, they always say you can sue a ham sandwich, doesn't mean you're going to win. He could probably sue for this because she said they relentlessly mocked him. And the greater video shows the kids, more likely than not, were just clapping along. However, you've got to prove that, this person, if you watched the video and reasonably assumed it was mocking, well, that you can't really sue for this. Let's take a look at this one. The editor of Mother Jones, who has disgraced the publication's investigative history in her tenure, made an art form of spreading fake news, dating back to when she was fronting for Fusion GPS, saying, "I am truly dismayed by how many in the MSM got worked yet again by conservative claims that one video exonerated these kids. I've watched them all. None put them in a better light unless you're really reaching. Some are a lot worse than the original." Total opinion. I do not see Robert Barnes being able to sue for this. But again, he isn't threatening a lawsuit here. So that's another important thing to point out. And finally, Barnes gave me a shout out. Really appreciate it. He said, many independent journalists who lean left agree the kids were falsely attacked, led by one of the best grassroots journalists in the country on these kinds of issues, Timcast. No media member who refuses to retract at this juncture has any credible defense to libeling these kids. I really appreciate the shout out from Barnes. So it goes on and on and on. There, look at this one from the Daily News calling it blackface. This is a false statement of fact. You can do a Google search of sporting event blackout paint and see a ton of photos just like this of kids with their whole bodies painted. And you can clearly see that this looks like jester face paint. Now, they might be able to argue that it does look like blackface, but it is still a false statement of fact. And if they did any groundwork, they would have found this is fake news. So it goes on and on and on. It does. I have a question before I sign off on this video, because it's going a little long. Can you name for me any massive fake news scandal that hit the left the way they're hitting on the right? Has the Daily Wire, the Daily Caller, and Fox News published anything so outrageously egregious that went viral and resulted in this kind of harassment? I can't. And so people often ask me why I'm always criticizing these left-wing news outlets, and I was like, I've criticized right-wing outlets, definitely. I've talked several times now about the 70% marginal tax rate. I posted a meme from the Daily Wire saying, why are they misrepresenting how a progressive tax rate works? But show me the egregious, massive fake news where people are lining up to sue. I just don't see it. So, you know what? This is going to be really interesting. The one I can say definitively is when USA Today reported they were chanting "Build the Wall," and they weren't. That's going to be huge. That's a cash out right away. Settlement. I can't see them not just settling instantly. I have to imagine USA Today's lawyers went into full-on panic mode the moment the corrections started rolling out. So, you know what? There we go. The story's actually rather long, but I think you get the gist. I wanted to highlight the potential for lawsuits, so stick around. I've got one more video coming up about fake news. I'll see you in a minute.